Hello. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the retirement of Yokozuna Kakuryu. Salt acceptance.
Roll the salt, get in the ring. Welcome to the Dohyo.
Hello and welcome back to the Dohyo here on Mr. J-Wag's channel. Today we are talking about Kakuryu, his career, his retirement, his possible legacy, some of my feelings, how I'm doing. We are dealing with the recent news that the 71st Yokozuna, Kakuryu, will be leaving us. He's not dead. As we all know, last week he announced his retirement. He's been very kyujo for the past year. In general, he's missed more than 40% of his tournaments at Yokozuna. This wasn't really a surprise, but still, it hurts a little bit. So here at the Dohyo, we just wanted to talk about Kakuryu and some of our opinions about him. I'm sure there are going to be much more in-depth historically based sort of tributes to Kakuryu. This is just going to be sort of a few things other people may have missed and a few personal observations. Now, of course, there's the obvious. He won 6 tournaments, got 8 Jun Yusho second places, so his resume places him sort of in the middle of the Yokozuna field in terms of championships, but he ended up having a very long career, sort of put into 3/3. He spent about 5 years in the lower division before making it up to Makuuchi, and then once he did that, he spent about 5-6 years in Makuuchi in the Maegashira and lower ranks before making it up to Yokozuna, before spending his final 6 or so years as a Yokozuna. Now, in my sort of sumo fandom, there have been 4 Yokozuna: Hakuho, Haramafuji, Kakuryu, and Kisano Sato. Now, Kakuryu seems to be the outlier of those 4 in a lot of ways. Number 1, he didn't have a wrestling background when he moved to Japan. He was just inspired. Well, first he wanted to be a professional basketball player, but then he was inspired by Kyoku Tenho and several other Mongolian rikishi, and he thought he could do it, so he wrote a bunch of letters to a bunch of sables, and the Izutsu sable said, "Come on out here, kid," and having never wrestled before, he moved out there. Now, when you're researching Kakuryu, one of the things you notice is everyone talks about how smart he is. Many people have noticed that he speaks Japanese as though he were a native speaker, and that is a very high compliment to get from a Japanese person. And this goes back, I think, to how he was brought up. His father was a university professor, unlike, say, Hakuho, whose father was a national wrestling champion. And that shows in Kakuryu's style. Kakuryu, of all those Yokozuna, was the only one who didn't really have the big Dohyo energy, that sort of swag, the sort of cockiness. Kakuryu always came into every match sort of looking at his opponent and being like, "All right, I see you, and I respect you enough that I've made a plan for you, but I still think I'm going to beat you." And more often than not, he was right. Now, those of you who've been following the Shadow of Hakuho know that Kakuryu would have won a lot more tournaments had Hakuho not been there. But one of the interesting things about Kakuryu is that all of his 14-1s, he had 5 14-1 scores, never had a Zensho, but in all of his 14-1s, he beat Hakuho. He ended up losing to another person in those 14-1s. So even if Hakuho never had existed, Kakuryu would still never have a Zensho Yusho. It sort of fits in with the sort of demeanor of Kakuryu. It's almost as if he would feel a Zensho would be a little too ostentatious. I mean, he's already a Yokozuna. So yes, he may not have been a natural at sumo, but what he was an amazing student. And for that reason, I think he's going to be an amazing Oyakata, probably better than most of the other Yokozuna who have turned Oyakata recently. If you notice, Hakuho's mentor was not a Yokozuna. It was a relatively small rikishi who never made it out of the Maegashira ranks, ended up training the greatest of all time. I have often found in my life that prodigies make very bad teachers. I imagine that if you're like a true prodigy at piano or math or sumo, it must be hard to explain what's going on. It's something that's always been very natural to you. Whereas people who have had to learn their greatness, or even work very hard to learn enough to get good at something, may often be much better teachers than people who have insane natural talent. I, for one, just want to thank Kakuryu. Thank you for all of the memories. Thank you for all of the blood, sweat, and tears you have put into your work to achieve the excellence you have achieved, and I cannot wait to see what you do for the next generation of sumo. All right, thank you for joining us here on the Dohyo. We have 2 episodes of The Shadow of Hakuho coming up. You're not going to want to miss those. And of course, we're going to have the Boulder predictions before the next Basho. All right, stay strong, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you next time on the Dohyo.